Hiring for your small business? If you're not looking for professionals on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. That's like looking for your car keys in a fish tank. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't even visit other leading job sites. So start looking in the right place. With LinkedIn, you can hire professionals like a professional. Post your free job on linkedin.com/achieve today.
Welcome back to Fine Tooning with Drew Taylor, your one-stop shop when it comes to animation news and commentary. I'm entertainment writer Jim Hill, and Mr. Taylor, whose writings on the industry you can regularly read over on The Wrap, and his musings on the Mission Impossible movies you can listen to on Light the Fuse, the official Mission Impossible podcast. He and I are recording this week's show on Monday, September 23rd, 2024. And there is lots and lots of news this week, Drew.
Yeah, we have a lot. We have some meaty stuff to dig into, I feel like, this week.
We do. And more to the point, we have some media stuff we've been holding back for a while, but we'll get to that in a moment. Okay,
yes.
but first, want to remind you, the news portion of Fine Tuning is brought to you by TouringPlans.com. If you're headed down to Central Florida anytime soon to sample some of the theme parks you can find there around the City Beautiful, well, Touring Plans can help you save time. More importantly, can help you save money as you wander around Walt Disney World or the Universal Orlando Resort. So please check them out at touringplans.com. Okay, we should probably start with the box office news to get that out of the way. So, were you startled to see what happened with Transformers 1?
Yeah, I thought we could talk about this a little bit. So what happened, I'll set it up, Jim, that Paramount had predicted, I think, about a $40 million opening weekend for Transformers 1.
Mm-hmm.
And it actually ended up coming in at around $25 million. Which means that it did not beat Beetlejuice in its third weekend, which just inched ahead of it. And this was a huge surprise for everybody. It was a huge surprise to Paramount. It was a huge surprise to Warner Brothers, I'm sure. And yeah, what did we think about this?
Well, I mean, I feel bad for Josh Cooley. I mean, who, based on the reviews, everyone loves this Transformers movie. You know, thought that they did a great job with it, but at the same time, it is the 9th Transformers movie, and we did just have the most recent live-action one. Rise of the Beast came out last year. So
yeah, which was arguably the worst one in the whole franchise. So
yeah,
I mean, the other thing, Jim, you know, you're a history guy. You know that animation and sci-fi typically do not equal boffo box office dollars. Whether it's Titan AE or Strange World or Lightyear or Treasure Planets, you know what I mean? Like,
that is an excellent point. But at the same time, I mean, again, given the way people were talking about this film, look, it's eventually going to find its audience, but I just wonder now, how fast do you think this thing is going to show up at Paramount Plus?
Well, Josh made a very ominous tweet today, which was like, go see it in the theater while you can. And, you know, I love this movie, Jim. I've been talking about it since Annecy this year. But yeah, I mean, it's hard when a movie can take its time to find an audience, something like Iron Giant, but it's another thing when it is a cog in a much larger machine and people are depending on a sequel and they're depending on a spin-off and all of these things, and it makes that kind of time that audiences can find it a lot more pressurized, I feel like, because there's so much else kind of depending on the success of the movie. But you know what? Who knows? It could have legs. I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, Ninja Turtles didn't open to that much bigger a box office last year, but it also doesn't have the wild robot breathing down its neck.
No, it does not.
A week later.
It does not. And so now suddenly I'm modifying I was actually more concerned about getting to see Wild Robot in the theater early. I suddenly feel like, okay, maybe I need to go out and see Transformers 1 on the big screen this week.
Why not make it a double feature, Jim? Why not make it a double feature?
Okay, I will see what I can do. But I'm feeling like I need to maybe schedule a preview night screening of the Wild Robot and catch this that same night. So, but anyway, before we step away from talking about Josh Cooley, isn't he the guy who was supposedly writing the Tower of Terror movie that Scarlett Johansson was supposed to appear in?
I think he's still working on it, yeah.
Oh, okay. Cool. All right, let's see what happens there. All right, now to get to the really big news of the week, which I'm going to preface this by saying, Drew, how long ago did you tell me about this?
I would say it was months, because I had an article fully written in the CMS for the Wrap from July.
Okay.
So yeah, and I'm sure I told you about it earlier.
You did.
Yeah.
And we're talking about Jennifer Lee stepping down as the chief creative officer of Walt Disney Animation Studios, and Jared Bush assuming that position so that Jennifer can now focus on, what is it, Frozen 3 and 4, right?
Yes, I think she's writing and directing Frozen 3, and she's writing and executive producing Frozen 4. So not exactly a light workload there.
No. But, and again, because you've done so much great writing over the years about Andrew Stanton's John Carter, and this really reminds me of that, what was it, the Monday after John Carter opened and didn't do the box office that anybody expected, and what was it, Iger himself sort of stepped into the breach and said, look, we as a company, we made this movie, we took a big swing and we missed. And so again, it's nobody's fault. And it's just, I feel like this is kind of the equivalent with Jennifer, because again, face it, as you mentioned, this has been something that's been talked about for months. So this is not new news. This has been going on at Disney for a while, but at the same time, Frozen is a billion-dollar franchise. And in much the same way that Disney didn't want to embarrass Andrew Stanton because they wanted Finding Dory, this is the same thing. It's like, we need to create as soft a landing as possible for Jennifer so that she stays with us and that she makes, as you mentioned, she writes and directs Frozen 3 and then writes and executive produces Frozen 4.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? I think that you're right that this was a response, obviously, to there were some fairly big misses at the box office in terms of Walt Disney Animation Studios. But from what I understand, Jim, this was very much her decision as well, that she wanted to kind of step back from the leadership role. And you and I have talked about this before, just how, sometimes it's not a great fit with someone who's so creative being asked to lead the kind of like corporate side of things. And we've seen, as we're about to get into, Jim, some similar growing pains with Pete Docter and Pixar.
Yeah.
So, I would not, I think it's honestly the best case scenario for everybody.
Okay. And also we're kind of bearing the lead here. This is now, Jared Bush is now in charge creatively of feature animation Florida, and Jared has done some great work for Disney over the years. So this is going to be interesting to see which films he champions.
Yes, I'm a big Jared Bush fan, and I think he is going to do great. And I just talked to him last week at the Moana Long Lead Day, which I will be able to talk about sometime in the not too distant future, I hope.
Okay.
But, he's got his hands full, too. And the other thing that I got to, exclusively reveal in my reporting was that Byron Howard is also going to direct Zootopia 2 alongside of him, which is very exciting news as well.
Oh.
So, yeah.
Okay.
So there's many pieces to this puzzle. Yes.
All right. Well. Again, now to pivot to the other story you alluded to, that IGN just did a very big piece that did not put Pixar in a great light. Now, mind you, I was fascinated by the way this story was written and structured because it talked about, well, I mean, for example, again, something that Drew had shared with me months and months ago in regard to Inside Out, that there was a all hands on deck, 7 days a week thing going on there. And in fact, you were the one who told me weeks and weeks ago that Pete Docter had stepped in to help sort of right the ship, that fix some of the story problems, that sort of thing.
Yeah, which I don't think that's a hugely controversial thing. I mean,
not at all.
This is a guy who made some of the greatest animated features of all time.
No, you would.
I would lean on him.
No, you would, and I'm sure Kelsey Mann appreciated that. But at the same time, it did not make Pixar as a studio look all that good. I mean, they talked about, again, how for months it was working 7 days a week to get this film out the door. Likewise, a couple of the stories that came out to the effect, well, we were just talking about Lightyear and how, the note coming down from Disney is they believed one of the things that prevented that film from connecting with audiences is all the controversy surrounding the same-sex kiss, which is seconds in this movie?
Yeah, that seems like a
No. You and me both. But because of that note, there was evidently a concerted effort in Inside Out 2 to sort of screen the film, sift through the scenes, and make sure that whatever we do, don't make Riley seem gay.
Right. And they failed on that part anyway. That's the funniest part about it.
Yeah. So, but at the same time, the kicker to the story is they talked about how Elio is right now in production up on Pixar, and it's the same exact situation. People have been working for months at this point, 7 days a week, to try to fix that film. Though, what do you think? Coming out of that story, what do you think that the thing, at least the folks in the industry, were most upset about? Was it the bonus then?
Yeah, I mean, you and I had talked about that before, I think. Mm-hmm. That's why I really like this piece. I thought it was very well presented, and it was all stuff that you and I had been hearing about for weeks. So yeah, I mean, I thought that was really sad. You know, they kind of set it up in a really great way where it's like, Pixar doesn't pay that well, but you get these bonuses, but then when you were shuffled off the movie, then you were not eligible for those bonuses. And it's a little bit like, not to give myself too much of a shout out, but my DGA story where somebody said, that animation people are so enthusiastic that they really allow themselves to be taken advantage of. And I think that was a great example of that here, where it's just like, they just, I don't know how it happened, but it really sucks, and I feel so bad for all these people that worked for so long on this stuff.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing is, if you think about it, for years, Pixar has been the pinnacle. And I get it, don't get me wrong. What's interesting is, if you think about how last year Pixar, because of what happened with Lightyear, or how Elemental literally had its time in the barrel, and it was fascinating to watch the entertainment press have to course correct toward the end of the summer when it's like, oh, that film actually did succeed, it did turn a profit, and it's like, oh, okay. So to now be in a situation where Pixar has just produced the highest grossing animated film of all time, but at the same time, you hear these stories about what it took to make that movie. And for a lot of kids headed to animation school, Pixar was where they wanted to go. And I wonder if this sort of story, where working for months, 7 days a week, suddenly, do I really want to work there?
Yeah. Although some of that reporting was that a Pixar movie does not make a profit usually until 600 million, or they break even at 600 million because of the revenue split with Disney, and that it doesn't actually make money until it crosses the $1 billion mark, which is like, no pressure.
Well, now it's so interesting you bring that up, because the next thing we're about to talk about, and in fact, the trailer that just dropped for Dogman. Now, of course, anybody who looks at this trailer and knows the DreamWorks filmography, it's like, wow, that style looks very familiar. Captain Underpants, the first epic movie from 2017, and it's like, I'm sorry, if you make that connection, you are not Sherlock Holmes, because it's the same artist and the same writer, Dave Pilkey, who does Captain Underpants and Dogman. But also, isn't it the same sort of production model?
It's the same production model, but it's actually not the same studio, which is kind of interesting.
Really?
So it's actually, it was Mikros who did the original movie, who did obviously amazing work on Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem and amazing work on that first movie. But this one was done by Jellyfish, who have worked with DreamWorks in the past. They did actually a little bit of Bad Guys recently, and I'm sure they will do some of Bad Guys too. And it's I thought that trailer was great.
I same thing here. It was one of those things that was so much fun, but at the same time it had sort of commonality with the Captain Underpants film style. And wasn't Captain Underpants sort of an experiment in trying to do something with a smaller budget and a smaller crew and that sort of thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
It's got the same production designer that did Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, which is great.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So, I think it's going to be really cool.
Now, you just recently got to talk with the director of Dogman, and so did he share anything about this film? Which,
this is a guy making his feature debut, Peter Hastings, but he's a vet from back to the '90s shows that you love, Animaniacs and things like that.
Yeah. Oh my God! Yeah. Wow.
So this is his first feature, and he's just really excited. Jim, you were talking about the kind of continuity from Captain Underpants, and he worked on the Captain Underpants show that DreamWorks produced. So this is very much in the same vein, and he said, that we were just trying to make something super fun, super heartfelt, and by the looks of that trailer, they succeeded. I'm a little wary of that January date, but at the same time, there's such a kind of like wasteland in between Christmas and like the spring, so I think this actually will do well.
Here's hoping. I mean, but what's kind of interesting, just recently again, was sort of drilling down into feature animation history, and Disney for the longest time, I mean, mind you, we're talking the 50s, that Disney would release like Peter Pan in February. And the notion was February? That's when you put your animated features out? And again, this is in the era where the notion that there would be a VHS, let alone a Blu-ray or a DVD, as an additional revenue source is like, no, pal. It comes out in the theaters and then it stays there and makes money, we hope. That time of the year used to actually be, or at least the way Disney looked at it, a very fertile time to bring out animation. So maybe
interesting.
Maybe DreamWorks
bringing it back, Jim.
Bringing it back. Oh, and speaking of bringing it back, we have season 2 of Gremlins 2, the new batch that drops on October 3rd, and we just got the trailer for this. What did we think?
I thought it looked fun. It's the gang is going to America this time, and Simu Liu is part of the cast now. And I was talking to Jim earlier, and I said I was so excited that John Glover is coming back to the franchise to voice a relative of Daniel Clamps from Gremlins 2.
Yeah, and I had forgotten from the original Gremlins 2, the new batch, Daniel Clamp as in Donald Trump. That's yes. So it's like, oh wow, I'm going to be interested to see this ancestor. So, all right. Anyway, folks, of course, tail end of this week, as we just mentioned, we've got Wild Robot arriving in theaters on the 27th. And when we get back from this break, we're going to share a pretty wicked Wild Robot related story. But first, this.
George Clooney and Brad Pitt's new movie, Wolves, is on Apple TV Plus September 27th.
That's where I want you to be now.
So if you want to see George Clooney and Brad Pitt, go to Apple TV Plus.
You got to start the story there.
Or if you want to see Brad Pitt and George Clooney, go to Apple TV Plus.
I am enjoying the show.
And if you want to see their new movie, Wolves,
You can't do it, I'm going to help you out. I can do it, so do it.
definitely go to Apple TV Plus.
Admit it, it's cool. Okay, fine, it was very cool.
Wolves, streaming September 27th on Apple TV Plus. Rated R.
Prime Big Deal Days is coming October 8th and 9th with exclusive savings just for Prime members. Woohoo! Involuntary deal squeals can happen, like the deal on new running shoes squeal. The deal on a new blender squeal. Yeah! Or the infamous deal on a new massager squeal. Yeah! Save big on electronics, fashion, and more this Prime Big Deal Days, October 8th and 9th.
This episode is brought to you by Buffalo Trace Distillery. Powerful yet smooth. Contained but never tame. Proudly going their own way, but never going alone. This is the spirit inside Buffalo Trace Bourbon. Made at Buffalo Trace Distillery, the world's most award-winning distillery. Buffalo Trace is always perfectly untamed. Distilled, aged, and bottled by Buffalo Trace Distillery, Franklin County, Kentucky. 90 proof, 45% alcohol by volume. Learn more at buffalotracedistillery.com. Please drink responsibly.
And we're back. Before we get started with the feature this week, folks, of course, on last week's show, Drew and I paid tribute to James Earl Jones, the film star and the noted voice actor. Also, we did forget to mention that, he had quite the considerable career on the stage. However, the folks in New York, that they haven't forgotten, which is why Broadway, this Thursday night, September 26th, they're going to dim all the lights on Broadway in honor of the late James Earl Jones. So you won't be in town by then, though, right? You're not getting to New York till next week or thereabouts, right?
Yeah. I'm leaving this Friday, so
okay.
Yeah, I will be in New York if anybody sees me walking down the street. Mm-hmm. You can punch me in the face or say hello or whatever you want to do.
Who do you think you are, Rick Moranis? No. Okay. All right. Anyway. Okay. So, like I said, very much looking forward to Wild Robot and now doing the double feature of Transformers 1 and Wild Robot. But I wanted to bring up a tweet that Peter Brown, the author of the Wild Robot trilogy, which again is the book series that this new DreamWorks movie is based on, he tweeted something out on September 16th that I actually thought was kind of raw but kind of sweet, and basically what Peter said is it petty of me to keep repeating that this beautiful movie by DreamWorks is based on my book? The team of artists and animators and designers did an outstanding job. And I want people to know that my book was the inspiration. And is that wrong? This is all new to me. And I have to say, no, Peter, it's not wrong. But the hard reality is, yes, it's your story, but it's now their movie. And I bring this up because also last week it was revealed that there's a brand new paperback edition of Wicked being released, and on the cover, Drew, it's the actual poster art for Universal's movie version of Wicked. So Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande are there as Elphaba and Galinda. But here's the thing. Inside of that is the Gregory Maguire book, which is really, really, really different from the Broadway musical and certainly different from the movie that will be coming out. And I kind of feel bad for the kid who goes to the store and sees that, and oh wow, the thing about the movie, I'm gonna take this home and read it. And I want to talk today about that, about animated films or films in general that are based on books that really depart from the source material. I mean, Drew, did you ever get to read any of the Cressida Cowell books for the How to Train Your Dragon series?
I never did, but I was always curious how close they fit or didn't fit to the movie.
Well, actually, if you pick up the art of How to Train Your Dragon, you can see the folks at DreamWorks in 2008, 2009 genuinely struggling to get their arms around these characters, because in the original Cressida Cowell book, Hiccup and Astrid and the gang are 8. I mean, they are little. Not only that, but Burke already has dragons. And in fact, that's the whole point. You're in the world and you see how the Vikings live alongside the dragons. And it was actually Chris Sanders who supposedly, as they were working on this, just like, no, this is film 2. That we need film 1. How did dragons come into this world? And more to the point, I can't do much with an 8-year-old boy.
Right.
We need to age this character up, which is why Hiccup and Astrid and such became 16, 17 and teenagers with hormones and that sort of thing. And suddenly you can introduce the notion of a dad being disappointed in their son and that sort of thing. And suddenly there were places for this film to go. But on the other hand, there were, I want to say, 8 to 10 of these books that Cressida Cowell had written set in this world that went down a very, very different path. And speaking of going down a different path, I know at some point in the not so distant past, you must have sat down and at least tried to read Who Centered Roger Rabbit, the original Gary Wolf.
Oh God.
Yes. See. All right. And
yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And this is the thing. I don't mean to be mean to Gary Wolf. I really don't. But he's written at this point 3 different Roger Rabbit books. There was the original Who Censored Roger Rabbit, which Disney bought when it was still in galleys, and that's what eventually Who Framed Roger Rabbit was based on. But then Gary went on to write 2 additional books, Who Plugged Roger Rabbit and Who Whacked Roger Rabbit. Rabbit, he's getting slapped around a lot by Wolf. And they're just not good books. Can we say that?
I think we can say that. Well, and I think what's interesting too is the relationship between the adaptation and his subsequent books, whereas the original book was very different, and then the movie came out, and then his follow-up was much more in the style of the movie, including I think that Roger Rabbit was dead in the first one, and that there was this weird mechanic where tunes could be kind of cloned.
Yep.
And then they would disappear. Do you remember all of this, Jim?
Again, it was, but it was so laborious. And wasn't the second book where there was both Jessica Rabbit and Little Jessica, which rode around on Eddie Valiant's shoulder?
Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, and again, look, he had this huge success. But again, it was largely because the folks at Disney, and let's be honest here, Disney couldn't figure out how to do it themselves. In fact, forgive me, folks, just again, to circle back on last week's show, we were talking about the late, great Peter Renaday and all the work he did for Disney. And I totally blanked that those early Roger Rabbit tests that you can still watch on YouTube, that's Peter Renaday as Eddie Valiant.
Yep.
You have him in the streets being menaced by that giant police officer, and then him in the bar with the angry Jessica Rabbit, who's really more based on Betty Davis than anything. And I want to say there's at least one scene with the Roger Rabbit that was voiced by Paul Reubens of Pee Wee Herman. But yeah, right. I mean, but again, that's how Pete was treated by Disney. It was the effect of, hey, we got something we're doing. Can you come to the studio for a couple of days? We're going to shoot something. But yeah, I mean, it was Zemeckis who took this thing on, who decided, look, it's a film noir. and we need to lean into that. And we got the lovely film that we got. Never got a sequel, but we got the lovely film that we got. But the other thing here, Drew, you just have to admit is it is sometimes hard to adapt a book to the screen. And there's like that lovely story about when Walt was trying to adapt Mary Poppins to the screen. And do you know this one where he calls the Sherman brothers in to his office and basically throws the book at them and says, go home and read this and then come back in a Monday and tell me if you think a movie's in there? And Richard and Robert go home and they do exactly that. They read the book and then they literally go into Walt's office on Monday and say, okay, well, we've read the book and we've marked the 8 chapters that we think could be used to turn this into a movie. And Walt just smiles and says, open your copy. And gets, all right, open your copy. And then he opens his copy, and Walt had picked the exact same 8 chapters. And it's like, okay.
Such a great story.
Yeah, we're golden. Okay, we're going to get this done. On the other hand, there's the inversion of this story when, a couple of years later, Walt calls the Shermans in because he needs somebody to write the score for Jungle Book. And one of the first things he says is, holds up the copy of the Rudyard Kipling book, is this first thing, don't read this. Let me tell you the story of the movie we're going to make. So sometimes you do that. Sometimes, for example, The Rescuers. Basically what Disney did with that is they kept the idea of the Rescue Aid Society and they kept the name Miss Bianca. And after that, they wrote an entirely different story for that film. And that's what people know and love today. Can you think of any other cases like that?
Oh, God. Well, the Jungle Book is interesting, though, too, because they went down a rather dark path for a while, didn't they?
No. Yeah.
Was that Bill Pete's
That was
version?
Bill Pete. That was Bill Pete. In fact, that's the reason he left Disney, is that he had boarded the entire film. He showed his boards to Walt, and Walt's like, this is really dark. And is there another way we can go with this material? And Bill was offended. Just the whole notion of, I put all this time, all this effort into this, and you're telling me to go another way. And I will go another way. I'll walk out the door here at the studio and I'll go off and write children's books. And that's what he did. But
what a shame. What a shame.
Well, we got a lot of great children's books out of it.
No, it's true.
Okay.
But
speaking of great stuff, I want to remind folks that coming up next month, October 18th through the 20th, out in LA, we have the Animation is Film Festival, which, Drew, you've spoken about with much enthusiasm in the past.
Yeah, it's a wonderful festival. If you've never done it, it's very centrally located. It's all at the TCL Chinese.
There we go.
The smaller theaters in the mall, but then also there's big gala screenings at the TCL, the big Chinese. And this is where, Boy and the Heron got its premiere last year.
There we go.
And that was just a really unforgettable night. And it's just wonderful. You're going to get to see a lot of the smaller movies that are going to kind of vie for the Oscars. I know that I don't know if I can say what's there yet, but anyway, if you've been curious about some of the smaller movies, it will be a good chance to catch up on those. How about that, Jim?
Okay.
But also there's big events and great talks, and I'll be there, and I'm sure I'll be, running around. So please, again, you can say hello. You can punch me in the face, whatever suits you.
Well, you want to give people on the West Coast a chance to do that as well. Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
But again, a relatively new festival. Only started in 2017.
Yes. It's kind of an American outpost for Annecy too, Jim. It's co-sponsored by the festival. They have a great happy hour with a lot of the people from Annecy who are just lovely. If you want a taste of Annecy, but at the Hollywood and Highland Mall, this is where you go. How's that?
All right.
For a pitch.
And is the Johnny Rocket still operating there?
The Johnny Rockets is alive and well, Jim.
Okay. Cool.
I
can get I can get a cheeseburger and a chocolate shake, and I can go to work in progresses and Q&As and see features.
That's right.
So
that's right.
Okay, I'm there. All right. But also, speaking of things that, again, I know you're really, really going to enjoy, there is, of course, Light the Fuse, the official Mission Impossible podcast with Drew does with his other co-host, and I'm not jealous, Charles Hood. You guys have done such a great job with that series of podcasts. You got to talk with so many amazing people in the film industry who not only tell you about the various installments of the Mission Impossible series they worked on, but also all of the other films. And that's why, again, in fact, I'm weekend after next, I have to drive up to Vermont, and then while I'm up in Vermont, I got to drive down to Logan to collect my sister-in-law who's flying in from Oklahoma. So it's going to be me and Drew and Charles in the car, because again, I listen to these podcasts and I always learn so many great behind-the-scenes stories, not just about the Mission Impossible movies, but also, by the way, if you're in the car and you need things to listen to, we got some other podcasts here. We of course have Disney Dish that I do with Len Testa. We have the Epic Universal podcast, which I do with Eric Hersey, who, by the way, produces this show along with David Gray. We also have I Want That Too, which I do with Eric's lovely bride, Lauren. We also have Looking at Lucasfilm, and I got to go poke Brian Gunn. It's been a while since we've done one of those. And I'm actually doing all of my viewing now to get ready to bring back Marvelous Disney. In fact, just a quick aside here, Drew. Have you watched any of Agatha All Along? What do we think?
I have. I've seen the first 4 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
I am intrigued, and I'm not sure I'm totally in love with it, but
okay.
I am.
Okay.
I'm entertained. Yeah.
Well,
I'm very excited about Skeleton Crew. That's what I'm really looking forward to.
That one I'm looking forward to as well. But as part of my prep, I had neglected season 2 of Marvel What If, and finally watched that, and that was so much fun. Cannot wait for season 3 of that.
Season 3 coming up, and also Zombies. Marvel Zombies.
I
love all this. I love all this. Like we're toggling back from Marvel. There are I think 8 Marvel things coming out next year between the shows and the movies. So
and the
I'm glad we're getting this reprieve.
There we go. And in fact, just today the Thunderbolts teaser trailer dropped. So
that was a great trailer. That was a great trailer.
I agree. I'm interested to see where that goes. And and before I forget, also need to mention Manufacturing the Magic, which is the lovely history of themed entertainment that Shelley and Noah Valladolid are doing. We're hosting that podcast here. And if you're interested in that area in history, please check that out. And let's see. Also, if you could do me a favor, folks, we also have the Disney Unpacked thing that Len and veteran Imaginer Jim Schull and I are doing on Patreon, and we're just now wrapping up our month-long thing on Dumbo the Flying Elephant. And in fact, just today, Schull and I finished the script for the Equatorial Africa show, which you're going to have to rush out the door, but that's a good one. And all right, beyond that, if you could do Mr. Taylor and I a favor, if you could head on over to Apple Podcast and rate and review, well, not just the podcast you're listening to right now, Fine Tooning, but also Light the Fuse, again, the official Mission Impossible podcast. That would be great help. Beyond that, okay, social media, Drew, where can folks find you on social media?
Drew Tailored, like a tailored shirt, on every platform, but mostly Instagram and Twitter. And what about you, Jim?
Okay, same thing. I am on X, Twitter, and Instagram as Jim Hill Media, and over on Facebook as Jim Hill Media News. And I think that's going to do it for this week, folks. So thank you so much for listening. And on behalf of Mr. Taylor, hope you've enjoyed this episode of Fine Tuning, and we will be back soon.